This is part 2 of the turkey ballotine. So if you didn't see part 1, I suggest you skip back and see that so you can see how the dressings are made. Of course, I'm not your dad, or probably not your dad. You do what you want to do. In this part, I'm going to bone the turkey, separate the white meat from the dark meat. I'm going to make force meats from the dark meat. I'm going to butterfly the white meat. I'm going to try to assemble it with the dressings we made in part 1, the cornbread dressing and the spinach dressing, along with some overcooked sweet potatoes. Spin it up, cook it sous vide, roast it, and then I'm going to devour it. Let's get into this. So here's my turkey. This is Thanksgiving week, and this is my 3rd holiday season here in France. And I've never seen a turkey before December. You see turkey meat, you'll see turkey breast usually in the stores. And this one's not very big, 3.874 kilos. So pretty small. Supposedly washed. You see it's trussed and ready to go. But look at all those feathers. It's going to be real important that I keep the skin intact, so I need to be kind of careful here.
We Sherpa people have a great respect for the mountain. We call Everest Chumbalunga.
Birds here tend to have a lot smaller breasts and more dark meat because they're not treated with hormones to artificially inflate the breasts. Fortunately, that doesn't translate the same to women here. Their breasts seem to be perfectly adequate, but I haven't done a scientific study of that. All right, I want to cut my skin all the way around. Tendons, no problem. Let's see if it'll cut through the bone. If not, I'll have to go get a Dremel. Feels like it's going in there. Look at that. Take a sheet of parchment paper and let's see what we've got. I'm going to do now is pop this in the freezer, and then I'll make the fat even easier to separate. Yay. Now let's look at this girl. So now I want to take the breast off, and this is I want to keep it relatively intact because we're going to need to butterfly this out to make a nice flat, relatively flat, evenly spaced piece of meat. And again, trying to keep the muscle groups in place. I'll go ahead and take that tendon off. All right, I'll set it here for a moment. Let's do the other side. All right, now that's most of the white meat, so I'm going to cut that part off. And drop this part of my stock pot. And there's a lot of nice meat still here. Some people call these the oysters and swear that the best part. I don't think that's true, but you tell me what you think. I'm going to set this aside. I may have a use for them. These pieces are really handy to patch if you have a hole somewhere. And another hole. Let's have to zoom out so you can see what's going on. Now, I'm going to make force meat out of all my dark meat. So all I have to do now is remove as many tendons as I can within reason and not cut myself. While I'm at it, I'm going to go and cut it into sizes that'll fit in my grinder. I find it interesting that if you look at the instructions for grinders, a lot of them will have you cutting everything into little tiny cubes. In my experience, cutting into strips works better. I'm going to drop this into the freezer. I don't want it quite frozen, but I want it kind of semi-frozen because the friction of the grinder will create a lot of heat, and that will mean that my force meats will never emulsify. Heat is the enemy of trying to emulsify force meats. Okay, back to our breasts. Just with my fingers, I'm kind of taking that where the tender is connected, right along there. If I'm not very careful, it's going to pull right off there. And I don't want that. But I do want to spread this out a little bit. So I'm going to cut down here and maintain the thickness of this main muscle all the way across. and spread out the tender. Nice big piece of artery there. That can go in the stock pot. Here on the opposite side, again, there's that line where the tendon, no, there's the line where the tender attached. I want to follow that same thickness that I've already established pretty much all the way through here and butterfly this out. Okay, that looks pretty good. Alright, it's been a while. This is partially frozen, which is good. I'm going to season it, and I'm using catrapice. This one has nutmeg, cinnamon, pepper, with traces of mustard and celery seed, and pimentos. This one has about 9 spices in it instead of the 4 that it's supposed to have. Kind of French allspice. What you usually find in pâtés, actually. It's also used in the Middle East. Usually it's pepper, cloves, nutmeg, and dried ginger. Actually, drop this in my bowl. Let's see if I can get that bowl back in the freezer. My skin is partially frozen. And that's going to make it easier for me to scrape some of this fat off. Spread it out a little bit. And if this was in a restaurant, I would be pretty careful with this, and I'd get it really clean. But I'm not going to sweat it too much because of 2 reasons. One is, this is really, I really don't have enough skin to make any mistakes with it. So normally I would scrape all of these blood capillaries off, but I can't make any mistakes, and it's not going to bother me any. I kind of like the feathers left on the bottom of that. And it's time to make our force meat. A new grinder. I have the little one that goes on the mixer, but it is definitely just not powerful enough. Okay, I'm going to start with the coarsest, the largest holes. So it's really ideal to cut it in strips because the auger kind of pulls its way through that way, pulls the meat through it, and you don't have to mush on it. Okay, here's the trick to getting that off, is you just bump the power on and off. Hands away from it until it entirely stops, because all of that's going to have to be pushed back in, right? You see, there's where the tendons that I'd missed got wrapped up around the spindle, the auger, and the back of the blade, and slowed things down. So I'm just going to drop that. I'm going to drop those tendons into my stock pot. And now I'm actually going to go with my finest attachment, which I would normally use for pâté. Okay, I want to pause there because I need to taste this. Now, tasting raw poultry, generally not a good idea. Even here in France, where I trust things to be a little cleaner than what I grew up with. So I'm just going to take a little of this, put it in some plastic wrap. Twist around, make myself just a little bag. And I'm going to drop this into my stock pot that's simmering right now and poach it. My stock pot is just boiling away. There's my plastic bag with the turkey. You see, it's going to cook pretty fast. Kind of squeeze it there and see it's not quite cooked. So it's time for me to begin a little more patient. I'm not happy about it because I don't want this to get too warm. Not quite. Okay, I think I can get away with that. Now what's interesting is that it really held together nicely. It's cooked. Oh man, I'm happy with that. I'm very happy with it. Here you see more tendons wrapped up around the blade. So I'm definitely pulling that off and dropping it in the stock. Now I need to look at this. This is the stuff that didn't pass. So you see there's a bunch of tendons. I thought there's a little piece that didn't go through the first time, much less the second grind. I could add this in and not worry about it, but I have plenty, so I'd rather just drop this into my stock pot and get what flavor I can out of it, as opposed to mess up the texture. And we know that we got a pretty good emulsification after poaching that first pit, so there's a chance that I'll get a little Scooby snack. I'm going to want to be very precise about how I'll put this force meat in my ballotine. So I'm going to use a disposable pastry bag. I'm not even going to cut it yet, because I'm not ready to use it. Give that a couple of spins and drop it in the fridge until I'm ready to use it. I need to season this, and I'm going to season it like I would if I was cooking a whole turkey, except I'm going to season it from the inside. So I'm using smoked paprika, and then if you're lazy you would use poultry seasoning, but the thing is poultry seasoning is just sage and thyme, maybe a little rosemary. And that was the last of my crushed sage. Fortunately, plenty of powdered. And you see my skins look like they're different shapes, and so do my breasts. So I'm going to try to match the shape to the skin. Nice. Now, normally if I was doing a 20-pound turkey, a 25-pounder would even be nicer. I would be able to wrap this all the way around, so I would leave a bigger gap at the edges. But I think I'm going to be lucky to get a horseshoe out of this one. Because these skins are just so small. I need to find my hole there. I'm going to grab another pastry. All right. Insert the, can you see where I'm working? Good. I want to fill this leg cavity all the way down to the bone. And that's going to be pretty good. Same on the other side. Now this is my feathery leg. Cool. Okay. If I had butcher twine, that's where I would tie this off. But I don't have butcher twine, nor do I have an abundance of patience.
I can die in any way the fates choose. That's not up to me. But what is within my power is to decide how I live.
Time to make some big sous vide bags. And I am not particularly well known for finesse, but I'm going to try.
Courageously or timidly.
As it's pulling the vacuum, I'm working to try to get it into the shape that I want it. Looks like I've got all skin on that side. Got all this green from the spinach. So what I'm going to do is cook this at a really high heat in the oven. It's really important when you sous vide. You get a great flavor, but you have to make it visually appealing as well. A little sage to make it